In today's video, I'm going to talk about forensic phonetics, more specifically the area of ear witness identification. I will go over a case where ear witness identification was heavily used by the prosecution, and then I will go over the accuracy of ear witness identification, and then a study that further explains what ear witness identification is and how it should be properly used in police departments. Okay, first of all, let's just go over what forensic phonetics is. Forensic phonetics uses voice and speech analysis to aid in legal cases. The police use it to enhance audios for such things as 911 calls, ransom calls, blackmail. They also use it to match someone's voice to a crime scene recording and to create a voice print, amongst other important things in an investigation. Then there's ear witness identification. Ear witness identification is when a witness or a victim is asked to identify the suspect's voice. It is often used in cases where the perpetrator's face is covered or the victim or witness's view of the perpetrator is obstructed. Okay, so to delve further into the usage of ear witness identification, we're going to look at a case. Let's get into it. The case we're going to look into is the case of the state of North Carolina versus Leslie Jean. So at 3 a.m. in 1982, the victim was awoken by a black man standing over her. He sexually assaulted her for over an hour. During that time, she was able to make out his facial and physical features due to the light coming from the kitchen. The victim reported the assault to police, and a description of the suspect was given. That same morning, a man was stopped by police for fitting the description of the attacker. The suspect, Leslie, consented to the police going through his work locker and allowed them to take his photo. A photo lineup was made of 6 men, including him, which was presented to the victim. She was unable to pick out one of the men as her attacker, but the next day she asked to go back to the police station to see the lineup and picked out the picture of Leslie, stating that it made her feel sick to her stomach. A few days later, police asked Leslie if they could record his voice. He agreed, and his voice and 4 others were played to the victim. She selected Leslie's voice, saying, "Number 3 sounds like the one that was in my bedroom the other night." The detectives never told the victim that any of the recordings were that of her attacker. In another lineup later, the victim again picked out Leslie and he was arrested. The prosecutor's case heavily relied on the testimony of the victim, which included the lineup selection, but also the voice recording of Leslie, which was selected. Leslie presented 4 alibi witnesses, 3 bunkmates from the camp he was at, who said he was in his bed at the time of the attack, and his commanding officer, who said Leslie was on the base at the time of the crime. Even so, Leslie was convicted of the crime, and the jury found the victim and her identification more credible. 5 years after his conviction, Leslie filed a petition to be brought before a judge who could challenge his imprisonment, but it was denied. However, 4 years later, Leslie was released as the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fourth Circuit found that the evidence used by the prosecution was not disclosed to the defense in a timely manner, which was a violation of his rights. The information that wasn't disclosed was that the victim was hypnotized before she made the identification to try to remember what had happened because she had blocked it out. In 2000, 9 years after his release, Leslie obtained a court order for the testing of the DNA from the evidence of the rape case. 3 months later, the DNA test came back negative for a match against him, and he was pardoned by the North Carolina governor. He was then awarded $176,000 in compensation for the 9 years he spent in prison as an innocent man. This case shows the complexity of ear witness identification, so the question needs to be asked: how accurate and dependable are ear witness identifications? It is believed that the first thing we forget about someone is their voice, so how does this allow people to accurately identify someone's voice days, weeks, or months after a conversation occurs? This is highlighted in the many wrongful identifications and even in some cases the wrongful convictions, as it is not unlikely for someone to identify the wrong voice. This can be seen in the case of Leslie Jean. This is why courts usually treat ear witness identification with some skepticism. There are several reasons why someone may identify the wrong voice, and we're going to get into them. The first thing that impacts someone's ability to accurately identify a voice is familiarity. Had the witness or victim had prior exposure to the voice? Significant prior exposure to a voice makes it easier to identify. The next is exposure length. The longer someone hears a voice, even if they have yet to hear it before, the greater accuracy they have in identification. Having someone speak only a small number of words, for example, has been shown to affect the identification accuracy of even those who have had prior exposure to that person. So this means that even if your best friend was hypothetically the suspect and you had to hear their voice, but they only said a couple words, you wouldn't be able to probably pick them out as accurately as you would be able to if they said a full paragraph. The next is retention interval, so the amount of time between the incident and the voice identification. However, this is a bit kind of iffy because courts don't always see this as relevant, as the evidence of intervals impact on speech is inconsistent. The next is confidence. The confidence the witness has in their identification. In the R versus Hibbert case, the Supreme Court of Canada recommended that no weight should be given to witness confidence, as a link between confidence and accuracy in voice identification has yet to be found. However, juries may be more compelled to believe someone on the stand if they are confident in their decision and not wavering between, well, I don't know, maybe so. The next is attention. The amount of attention the witness put into listening to the suspect. Were they paying attention or were they focusing someplace else? Was there too much background noise that they wouldn't be able to focus properly? What was happening during this incident or conversation? And then last is the instructions given to the witness before they make an identification. What is said to someone before they make an identification can influence their decision very, very heavily. To discuss that further, I'm going to discuss a study that was done on the accuracy of ear witness identification at Nottingham Trent University in the United Kingdom. So there were 533 participants with an age range of 18 to 75 years that were selected from the University of Greenwich Face and Voice Recognition Lab volunteer participants database. The voices used for the recording were those of 30 different men aged 18 to 25. The recordings used for the target encoding were taken from a 60-second segment of a phone call discussing a crime, but the interviewer's side had been removed. Before hearing the target's voice, participants were informed that they would be listening to a voice recording and then having to answer questions about it. After listening to the 60-second target voice sample, the participants then completed a 5-minute word search. They then received instructions for the voice lineup that they were about to hear, reminding them they had previously heard a perpetrator discussing a crime and now had to identify the speaker. However, they were not told whether or not the voice of the suspect was in the group that they would be hearing. Okay. Participants then completed either a serial or a sequential voice lineup. So the serial voice lineup played 9 recordings, one after the other, and after all recordings were played, either standard warning conditions, which read the perpetrator may or may not be present. If you think the perpetrator was present, please select the correct voice below. If not, select the perpetrator was not present. Once they received the strong warning condition, which meant they received the standard one and then were reminded again to please consider your response carefully. In a real case, selecting someone from the lineup when the perpetrator is not present could lead to a wrongful conviction. Participants then chose either any of the 9 voices that they had heard or that the perpetrator was not present. They rated their confidence of their decision on a scale of 1 to 10. The sequential lineup, on the other hand, meant that one voice was played, and then each time the participants were asked either yes or no, indicating if they believed that the voice was the perpetrator or not. Once they said yes to a voice, no more voices were played. Like the serial lineup, they were given either the standard warning condition or the strong warning condition. If they said yes to a voice, or even if they said no to all the voices, they were asked to rate their confidence of their decision on a scale of 1 to 10. All participants then completed a questionnaire about their experience. 2 of these questions were a manipulation check and started at a default of 5 on an 11-point scale. The first question asked, to what extent did you consider responding that the perpetrator was not present or responding no to each voice? The second question asked, before completing the voice lineup, you were warned that the perpetrator may or may not be present. To what extent did this warning influence your decision? Okay, now we're going to talk about the findings of the study. Okay, let's talk about the results. So in both types of lineups, sequential and serial, those who received the strong warning condition were less likely to identify one of the voices as the perpetrator. The results suggest that the stronger warning condition led to fewer false alarms, as there was more hesitance and caution being presented by those who were participating. Overall, less than 50% of identifications made were correct, and false identifications were quite high. Confidence was not reliably correlated with accuracy, as participants showing high confidence levels despite their low accuracy of identification. However, those who received a strong warning condition before serial lineup specifically were more confident about correct responses compared to incorrect ones. Now we're going to discuss the usage of ear witness identification and just talk about it and summarize it up a bit. Okay, so ear witness identification has proven wrongful, as we saw in the case of Leslie Jean, as it led to the wrongful conviction of him. So it makes it difficult to be fully supportive of the usage of this form of identification, especially when it is being used as the critical element of a case. When juries are presented with a victim tearfully confirming that the person who attacked them is the one on trial, why wouldn't we believe them? This is where the trouble starts. It is difficult to believe that someone will always accurately identify the right voice. Our hearing can be impaired by environmental factors when hearing a voice. We are also likely to be influenced by those around us, whether it be the police, a lawyer, or even yourself, if you want to have the closure the person who hurt you is locked away. The field of forensics itself continues to grow with more advances in technology that is being used. This growth can be done too in cases of earwitness identification by creating better protocols for voice lineups. As seen in the study, strong warning conditions and instructions encourage a more conservative decision-making process, which reduces false alarms. Also, continued research into the psychological and cognitive factors that influence voice identification will be crucial in enhancing the validity of earwitness testimony. So, though earwitness testimony is useful and has allowed for cases to be closed, it is, as seen in the study, it can be dangerous for it to be the sole factor of the case, which it can be in some cases, especially when there's not a lot of evidence to go on. That can be dangerous because there are so many wrongful identifications. So there needs to be kind of a fine line between using it as a stepping stone instead of the whole foundation, which is not easy. I'm not a lawyer, it's not going to be easy to do. But as there's more advances in forensic phonetics itself, it does make it, hopefully, there's going to be more ways to distinguish someone and confirm someone's voice. But if we are going to stick with forensic, like using earwitness identification, there needs to be things put in place that make sure that there is no coercing people into picking someone, that there's several people that are similar that can be used in the voice identification lineup, that there's no visual cues, that there's not just a police officer doing it, it's a trained forensic phonetician who's doing it. Okay, that's it. Thanks for watching.